Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Sessions, A View of the Light. And we are so happy you are here today. It's the end of February and all that crazy energy and all the crazy stuff that's going on in our world. We're so happy you've had the chance to come in and tune in and see us here, whether you're watching us live or on the replay. Please let us know where you're watching from. Send us a comment, like our show, like our YouTube, listen to our podcast, do a review and rate it. That really helps us out. Whether you're on the road or listening to the replay, we're really happy you're here today. And we're so happy to have back a man that we figure is in the know more than anybody that we know about what's going on in this world, or at least he has some new opinions and what's going on in our skies this week, because everybody's talking about it, even up here in Canada, since they've been shooting down things up here. They don't know what it is, but it's not Canada geese. We know that. So we just want you to tune in and please put your opinions in the comments too, if you have any opinions what's going on. But first I'm going to bring in Barry Littleton, and Barry's got he's been awake since he was probably born, and he's had a lot of different experience, near-death experience. He's been a contactee. I'm going to have him just sort of give his own little story about where he's from and where he's coming from and what he's doing now. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty about his opinions on what's going on and what they are shooting out of the sky, if it's balloons or, the up guy from that Scimitar movie or what's going on. So welcome, Barry, again to our show. We're so happy to have you here. And it's so nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and it's good to see you both again. So it's interesting times we're living in, definitely. So
it sure is. It seems like we just get over the pandemic, and now we have the balloon-demic, or whatever they want to call it. I'm not sure if it's connected, or everybody now, has they're not just taken at face value anymore. We're not just saying, oh, yeah, it's a balloon from China. Like, really? A balloon from China? Okay. It's like those mountain monster guys, hunters. Have you ever seen that show? Yeah. No. I think Sasquatch is holding those balloons, but I'm just kidding. Anyway, Barry, let us know, how did you come into this space? You're psychically aware. You've had contactees, and you do hypnosis too, right? You do regression hypnosis. Tell us a little bit about that and what you found out lately, or what you've been made aware of.
Well, what's termed an experiencer or contactee, that's something that kind of followed me my whole life, and I had to kind of deal with that, and along with other paranormal things, such as sensing, either inorganic beings, spirits, or whatever the case might be. Those are things that I think a lot of us have, but our society doesn't train us to really deal with it. So we wind up either trying to shut it off or other things. But that's brought me to where currently what I'm doing a lot now is dealing with earthbound spirits and crossing them over. And I do hypnosis, in which I deal with that, and also past life regressions, extraterrestrial encounters, which occur in all different types, and that's it's fascinating because it's much more of a insight to who and what we really are, as opposed to just the things we hear in the media and the things that we hear other people saying. And when I come from that, I was in an accident in 2010, which I had died during the accident when I was on the way to the hospital. So I had this near-death experience, and I had taken these head injuries, these brain injuries from impacts in the car. And then I died on the way to the hospital, and then I was in a coma for about 2 weeks. And then after that, it took me about a month to remember who I was in terms of pattern of decision-making and things like that. So I know what during that I had a near-death experience, and I had to kind of take that and compare that to these extraterrestrial, interdimensional being encounters I would have on board these ships as a kid, and then even on into my adult years, which I call adult onset experiences. So it kind of was different, because some of these are non-corporeal beings. Even if you're on board one of these craft, it's like when we say, when you're on board a craft and it's not just quote unquote a multi-dimensional ship, but also like many different races on there. What is it really like to be on board one of those craft?
Yeah.
It's a very, very bizarre, functional wise, vibrational wise, survival wise. It's a very different. So it's, things like that. But some of these beings were non-physical. They're different containers for consciousness, plasma, condensed light, all different types of forms for the consciousness. And when you encounter that and they're emitting some type of a love, high energy creator frequency too, I had to take that and compare it to these angelics that I saw when I had died, that I will call, the Uranta book has a term called super nanofem that describes angels that are like archangels, but at the same level, but just different. And I'm sure that's what I encountered when I had passed. And there's no doubt that they were not physical at all. These were light beings, intense, regal light, radiating so much love that I never felt anything like it. So I had to compare that to this energy I would feel from some of these non-physicals on board these craft. And in the presence of some of them, I experience, and you're both contactees, so you know, that there's something that, like, similar to what the gurus and swamis call Shaktipat, which is where the kundalini, you're around the guru and they touch you, and the kundalini, you have a kundalini release and the chakras are turning. You get something similar to that in the biofield of some of these beings that are of the higher vibrations. I'm not talking about the grays and reptilians. There's different beings I've experienced, so I think that, and I don't mean to put down any of that type of contact, because, through hypnosis and clients, I know how much that happens and how much that's a reality. I just didn't personally experience it. But I think I kind of represent a bunch of contactees that are just have positive stuff going on. And by no means am I special. I always thought years before coming forward, that there were about somewhere between 70, 80, or a little more of our population are contactees. It happens in the dream state, and most people are unaware of it. Even if you just see a UFO for, a couple of seconds, and you're in a crowd of people, and there's like 2 people that can see it out of 10 people. Everybody else is going, where? And it's right there moving. You can see it. We wouldn't think of something like a whole federation of beings collectively stop what they're doing just to contact you. And that's exactly what
That's
you know
so
what
funny.
I mean?
Totally understand what you're saying, because the other day when my husband and I went outside at night, and I said, all of a sudden I had somebody flash to me, like they just flashed and went out. And I said, did you see that? Because the first time I thought, oh no, that might have been a plane. And then the second time it was definitely glowed up as bright as Venus and then closed up again. And I said, he saw one later on that flashed. And I said, do you think they just are saying hello to us, or they're just coming in?
Bingo.
And he says, I don't know. I said, because I felt compelled to go outside, and it's minus 10 or 15 here. And I just go out and look up at the sky. It was a clear night. And I said, do you think they just came to say hello, or are they just waiting? So I don't know. Like I said, I got thinking about that exact same thing. Are they just saying hello to me, or are they just here?
In that site, and you got to remember, we're dealing with beings, whether they be interdimensional or extraterrestrial, that can bend the space-time continuum. So all bets are off. And you're dealing with a sighting like that for just what you were thinking. But just as you saw it, the amount of information that was probably transmitted to you on the superconscious and subconscious level will blow you away, that you can access under hypnosis when you get down to those theta levels and things like that. That's why I really criticize people that are, I used to be like that, when I was younger, especially. I was Mr. Physical Conscious Contactee, because the stuff that I had was physical, and it's like, being there. There's no doubt about it. It wasn't astral, but the thing is, the further you get away from the event horizon, it becomes fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
When you're not in the presence, in the biofield of these non-humans, something happens. It's like, you were just near them, but what, you know what I mean? It's very interesting, and for me, it's a vibrational difference, just like being on board a ship getting sick, this thing they call temporal aphasia. Some people laugh when I say that, but that's what it felt like. That's what they called it. And I was wanting to throw up, like being on a merry-go-round for a long time. You're kind of feeling like that, and you're also getting bombarded telepathically with pictures and emotions, and it's really a trip. And then you're seeing technology that you don't have a frame of reference for.
So total sensory overload, right?
Exactly.
Totally.
Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to keep going. I'm probably going left for what you ladies want to talk about.
No,
So,
no, no,
uh,
no, no. I think it's really important to have that frame of reference because do you feel your near death experience then added to all your gifts, or did they change your brain so that you can perceive things or gave you new pathways to those parts of your brains that maybe weren't accessible when you were born, more or less?
that's a great question. That's a great question. I had a number of doctors saying that I was an example of neuroplasticity, a big one. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I had taken hematoma to the frontal lobe, hematoma to the quarter lobe, hematoma to the brainstem, and I had diffusal axonal, which is like shaken baby syndrome, spotting of the brain, where your brain turns into case upon impact. So the odds of me surviving was very, very low, to say the least. But afterwards, and after I remembered who I was and had what's called a clearing out for a brain injury patient, and I had to deal with my encounters happened long before that. That would happen when I was in my late 30s. So that was not something that was involving encounters. But what it did do is one is I had to deal with a near death experience, but it augmented my abilities that I've always had, but I was always pretty good at hiding them from people, especially mediumship. As so many people that's probably listening now, I got attacked as a kid. I was 7 years old by a ghost, a non-physical human in a house. And these people that are like molesters or rapists, whatever, really criminal, I mean, dark souls, they die, they don't cross over, and they turn into something worse. And I encountered such in a house, but it makes you want to shut your gift down because you're like a beacon to them. And I know this thing now that I'm older, I can tell you it tried to join with me and it couldn't. And said it forced me out to try to get me out of the house. But it was an attack. And it doesn't take much to attack a 7-year-old kid. Oh, good job. That's not very hard.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of something that makes us shut our gifts down. But after the accident, I could no longer. Things would come in so much more, and even a wave in an augmented way that I knew that it's creator coming through with this, and I just start communicating the message to the person. And I'm speaking of the earthbound spirits that are ghosts or spirits that are attached to people on the outside of the energy field. Those ones that'll step forward and give survival evidence, you know what I mean, for whatever it is they're trying to give to this person. So that's that's different. I don't need to hit my head again to know that and I'm not supposed to ignore those gifts or ignore those abilities, and it's things that most of us can do, but it's to different degrees.
So you go to a house that's haunted and you talk to the spirit and see if they want to cross over or not. Or if sometimes they have a purpose here that they just want to be hanging out until somebody else goes over and they're waiting for somebody, right? Sometimes, do you think that's what happens?
I do more the earthbound spirits that are inside the energy field, inside the biofield. And these ones are attached normally to a specific part of the body, an organ and cells. And they actually express themselves through the person as negative behavior patterns. And as a medium, I can't detect them there like I can on the outside. Nobody can. They're so entwined in the person's energy field, you can't detect it. You know what I mean? But they'll come out during certain hypnotic processes. It is what it is. And, a lot of people are carrying them as much as some. I've had people that 10 or more. I've had a crossover, or less, a few, 1 or 2 or 3. But the thing is that these negative behavior patterns are things that are not the client, the person, the victim is not their own. You know what I mean? And it becomes really frightful when I'll ask how some of these earthbounds attach, and they'll tell you. And it's so strange when you have somebody like a petite little teacher and they're in trance and they start talking like a trucker or something. You know what I mean? It's things that you can't, and that's without suggestion. You know what I mean? It's a whole nother thing going on there. And they'll tell you. I'll ask, why didn't you cross over? Why'd you not go into the light? And they'll tell you. And the things that you hear, the amount of shock that comes along with the death process, and all the amount of fear. And others that have told me, I've heard several times, I thought it was, I mistreated a lot of people. I hurt people. And I think that light is hell. And I'm going to go in there and burn. These subconscious consciousness, something about the personality doesn't die when we cross over. or when we die anyway, excuse me, before crossing over. So that's kind of what I deal more with, are the ones that are inside the energy field, and trying to help them cross. And it's still, it's not the demonic level. These are like aunt and uncles that were too attached to the property they couldn't cross over, or their loved ones said, "Oh, please don't leave." And then, and then they stay, you know what I mean? And that love, that connection, it's really a trip, so it's things that just, I think that our society doesn't deal with. And I've know some people got really upset with me because I spoke against these, I'm going to call them fools, but misinformationals that talk about don't go in the light. It's a reincarnation cycle. It's a this and it's a that. And there are people that, one, have not died. They're not, okay, they've not had the NDE, the first criteria that I'm talking about that I went through. The second is they're not mediums. Okay. And the third is they've not dealt with a client, a case study of earthbound spirits on either the inside or outside of the energy field, like I just we're talking about now. Do they even know about that? You know what I mean? These are things that are serious. And I think that it's things that a layer that needs to be helped on this planet for us to go on consciously and to evolve. This needs to go on with this shift, this planetary pole shift, whatever. So anyway, sorry. Does that answer your question in a way long, blown out? I apologize.
It's really fascinating because I've heard of demonic possession, and we've had people that, like June Lundgren, who comes in and gets rid of demons that are attached to people. But this other, more like a Velcro spirit, like just attaches to a loved one or attaches to someone they really like, or they just can't leave because they're afraid. And it starts impacting that person's own personality, that a live human's personality. Like, I wonder if that's when you say, "You sound just like your father."
Even worse, what I encountered very quickly, often several times, were these earthbounds attached to people, and I'll ask where they joined with the client at, and they'll tell me at the hospital in the incubator room.
Yeah.
They were trying to help. I've heard, well, I thought maybe it was the light. I hadn't seen it anymore, and maybe it was my chance to reincarnate, or they were sick and I was trying to help them. So I joined with them trying to help. And then they grow up with these individuals. And, if you have a situation, you've got a man baby there, a male, and you've got a female that joins trying to help, and they start growing up, most of their life with these thoughts of this female. And I'm not saying that's the only reason we have some of those things in our society by any stretch, but it's a factor. When you have something like that happen and you have a baby who is not formed, it's fully connected yet, and you have this other coming in, you know what I mean? It's a whole other thing going on there. And I found that, at first I found that really frightful, to be honest. But we're not trained, for the most part in our society, when you have a baby, the parents putting that energetic womb, that protective shield over their baby while it's in the incubator room. We don't think that, or like, I think it's been about a year now ago. I had this client, and it's local in my city, and this is a client that knew how to protect themselves. Okay. But we get the stresses that get put up on us by sometimes dark forces, financial over here, your car, your people at work tripping with you, some petty tyrant, and then plumbing in your house goes out. They're trying to get you out of the house, and then they mess up your car. All these things to create these little cracks for somebody that knows how to shield themselves, and then they come in. Right. So this earthbound spirit on this client said they joined at the hospital. They said several times, well, the others in here weren't strong enough to join with them, but I was. And they said that several times. And I got her to cross over. But then, before I was for it to come and say, oh, by the way, you said many people in the room. How many others are in there trying to join? And the number she gave me was, she goes, well, somewhere between 34, I think it was 34 and 55.
Wow.
So that's what's going on in hospitals. I mean, if that's not a little bit frightening.
Yeah,
it is. Because I watched a video on that one day, and that started terrifying me, because you know how we send our light places and unicorns and things. I mean, we try our best. And then my grandchild was going to be born. So I thought, oh man. So I started sending protection around. I was using dragons around it, and then in the building, on the floors and in the room. And I didn't know what to do, but it's like, man, I got to do something to bring protection to the little one.
And then, going even a step forward, when you get those hospitals too, you get the MRI machines, these other things on these electromagnetic frequencies that have entities that come through. They generate portals and do all sorts of stuff. I had a few years ago before I had spoke, I went and had to get one of my wisdom teeth removed. One of the people didn't do that, but I had to get an X-ray before. And I started talking to the technician. I was saying about how there's sometimes entities supposed to be associated with the X-ray machines. And they turned around and looked at me. One of them said, I used to run an MRI machine. And she goes, they're asking me, how do you know that? So I just heard it talked about for a long time from MRI operators. And they say, yeah, but they're different. Say the ones that are around some of these X-ray machines are flinting. They kind of go away quick. But the ones around the MRI machines seem like they follow us home. And they give you nightmares.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I had mentioned that while I was speaking at that ranch, and Jimmy Church was there, and he had me on his show, and he heard that and brought it up during the show. He said, talk more about that. And I made a video about it. The amount of people that responded to that blew me away. But I've always heard that. But it makes sense, with these machines and how, the entities that are attached, so they're creating these portals.
Can you imagine what the CERN machine in Switzerland is doing then?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes something like that, I think the exotic particles that they're discovering that we're not hearing about, the ones that just, exist for a millisecond beyond the hogs, bison, or whatever, they're finding all sorts of exotic particles we're not hearing about. That, I think, is even more of a threat than them actually creating a portal that's vast enough to swallow the earth. You know what I mean? Because there's been hadron colliders, what they were called cyclotrons when I was a kid, been running for a long time. People should look up the Cosmotron. That goes all the way back to the 60s. That thing was fired up.
Yeah,
so there's
the Philadelphia project. Let's go back even further, right? Isn't that what it was called? Or something like that. Move the ship. Melinda was asking, can you demand those attached entities? So saying like some of us might have them. And can you demand that it leave like you do in entities in your home? Can you say to yourself, like, get out?
Man, that's another great question, okay? And I can only speak my experience, right? I dealt with cognitive behavioral therapy and things long before in my career, dealing with juvenile offenders and also at-risk children and also adults of different types. Okay, so I believe in the cognitive behavioral process. That helped me get back to who I am during my own recovery, all right? So when dealing with this, like I said before, we're not dealing with the demonic level for the most part, okay? These are like mom and dad or whoever, these normal people that don't cross over. And my God, it's so much easier than you would think to not cross over for a number of reasons. You know what I mean? It's kind of a trip, but I treat them not as this demonic, hey, get out, like a Max von Sydow, come in, you know what I mean? Come in with Linda Blair. No, it's not like that. I treat with them as people and using cognitive behavioral. And they respond much better. An example, and no one wants to talk about this, but I can see, so I'll see a portal there, and there's already loved ones there in human form. There might be angelics there, they're non-physical, but they're already there when the session first starts. And in the earthbound spirit, okay, talking to this person, they all consistently say how dark it is. It's always dark, you know what I mean? And they can't see what's there until I start talking about the love of God. No one wants to even say that word, and I'm non-religious, never had a religion, but there is a creator. Whatever word might be, but there's a creator and the love of God. And then they start being able to see the loved ones in the portal that was already there. And it's without any suggestion. Just talk about it and they, what's wrong? Wow. That light. There's my husband, there's my wife. Well, you want to go with him and please get off the client?
Anyway, so much of that happens in palliative care that those people come and they start seeing them before they're actually dying because they're reaching out to them. So you're like, come on, don't miss the boat. We're here waiting for you. We're here to help you across. And I think all that just reinforces the thought that there's a creator, because that this energy exists and there's that love, and we go into that light. And if it's just a reincarnation cycle, well, I think there's a creative energy behind that too. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very powerful. When people saying don't go in the light and stuff, but in the light the change happens. Now, when we first wake up from death, it's almost like if you've been to sleep like a real long 8-9 hours, you got deep sleep. When you first wake up, that alarm goes off, you hit the button, but you're kind of for at least a minute or so till you get up and get your coffee or whatever. And when we come out of the body, that shock is like that to a degree, and they're kind of hazy. And there are others that can come with false lights and things like that, or maybe tricks. But the discernment, you can tap into your discernment and feel the difference in light. Is it a living light like from the sun, or is it a cold light from the moon? You are capable of discerning that, and then going more with what is the love, the light. But you'll have others that come also that are angelics, your guides, your angelics, loved ones. They're in that light too. So we go into that light and change.
Or change back.
Yeah. And it's not, and I'm finding through, like when I do past life, between lives regression, that we have much more choice than anyone thinks.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to explain. That book from Dr. Newton, I can't remember his first name. Journey of the Souls. I remember that was one of the first books. And when I read that book, it started to really make sense to me. Yeah.
The bald head guy?
Well, yeah, and he was a doctor.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah. He does good
and
work.
he talked about the life between lives, and that he did sort of what you did. And he found out that there was life between lives and what went on. And it made so much more sense to me that, we have a choice. And that's why we keep learning lessons over and over again, because we didn't.
Just to say we can't access that for reasons I think down here are somewhat nefarious, but we'll talk about that another time. You ladies want to talk about the UFOs?
Yeah. Here's I'll tell you my weird theory, and then you tell me yours. Well, the balloon might have been a balloon, or it may have just been one of those Trojan ships that, go up. Was it from China? That balloon that they shot down was probably a balloon. The ones that they said they shot down over Lake Michigan and up in the Yukon, like, you saw the Tic Tac videos. They're not going to shoot down a UFO. I think the UFO may have phased out, and it might have looked like they shot it down. But if it was a UFO, they didn't shoot it down. That's my end of story. There's no way. Not with our conventional weapons. Not unless they got Dr. Spock on there with his phasers. What do you think? What do you think's going on?
How about you, Teresa?
Well, I decided to look at a few different videos, and people are going all kinds of different ways with it. Some of them are meditating and contacting things, and some are getting ready, like, oh yeah, this is the fake alien invasion. But from what I've seen, nothing makes me feel alien. Nothing makes me feel that energy, So either I'm missing it or something, but nothing inside of me is going, ooh, this is it, or.
See, that's why Spirit's like, I want you to say something. I was getting you to say something, and I will tell you that is, I think you're absolutely, I don't want to yell, but gosh, 100% on point. All right. Because I don't remote view, but I can see like you two can. And I picked up nothing off this. All right. I couldn't pick anything up off of it. Even worse than the Phoenix Lights. At least I got that was a hologram. You know what I mean? This, I didn't get anything off of. Okay. So a couple of days ago, I did this remote viewing show with Jessica Jones, and she remote viewed all three of those targets. All right. And it's fascinating because she got like nothing from it too. Like it was staged, all of them, but one of them. I did pick up one of them was like some type of a drone technology, maybe weather technology, one of the ones they had shot down, but maybe the one over Alaska. And she picked up something similar to that. All right. But otherwise she picked nothing up off this, but kind of staged. And I think this is something to divert our attention away from real stuff going on. So people can look this up. There's a thing that was called Project Loon, Loon. And what that was a project that ran for about 7 years from Google. And what's up, my friend? Whoever that is, I can see that one. It was a project from Google that involved these large balloons that were designed to float and be another type of internet for places
Right.
that are low on internet connections and things, or if there are storms and everything. That's a project that went on for years, and then they shut it down in 2021 and supposedly sold this equipment to either China or wherever, or several places. So that's this Project Loon, and there was like 61 of them at first that were released, and then I think they said that most of them burned up in the atmosphere. But how many, or how about the others that were released? So I think that's what we're seeing is some type of these technologies going on, and that's taken away from things that are really happening, which would be like this. For example, I talked a lot about how when dealing with asteroids and things coming in, I believe we're at war with microorganisms that are on the conscious level from space.
Right.
And when I say that, that comes from us detonating things in space based on the hydrogen molecule, nuclear things, what are the stuff they're doing out there, and also something called Project Stardust at Home. I don't know if they're still running it now, but what that was that Sloagen bucket that they dropped with all the space stuff in it. And you can look online through the microscope on Project Stardust at Home and find it like a dust track. They name it after you, or particles or something. They name it after you. So very interesting. But if you think about actually scooping up somebody from like a handful of people from Australia, Africa, wherever, and then doing experiments on them, that's war. If you're dealing with any microorganism that are sentient on the collective level, what those bombs are detonating, okay, that ripples into dimensions. It's all sorts of stuff going on. So in retaliation, you've got these hostile microorganisms coming in on meteors, okay, hitting, and that are creating these prion diseases. We've been watching those a long time. Those prion diseases started off as mad cow disease, then you get mad deer disease, okay, and these prion diseases that have this weird amino acid thing that attacks people and how they attack the body. And just things kind of went away. And now that evolves on into chronic wasting disease, a major problem that we don't hear much about. Why? It's a big problem. It's another one of these prion diseases. The red rain, okay, that people was recorded in China and other places. There are these things that I think is a retaliation against humanity to a degree. So it's just things to be aware of, but we're not going to hear about that because instead they're wanting to put on this fake alien invasion thing like you're talking about, and something about these balloons that are coming from Project Loon that is man-made. That's why nobody's picking up anything on it, and that's as opposed to what's really going on here. Or the things like these other things as us being aware of what's going on in our skies. We've got this thing called the nano satellite grid, and how many of those are floating out there. There's a gentleman, what was his name? Rodriguez Sanchez, I think, that talked about that in the book UFO Highway years ago. I'd read that, and I never heard of the nano satellites. We was talking about it way back then. So that's something we need to be aware of. Or something like Project Sophia, which stands for Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy. And that's a plane that's similar to like the president's plane that's got all this advanced equipment on it. It's an observatory. It's flying around constantly. We don't hear about any of the stuff that they're finding or getting. Most people don't even know about that project that exists. What is the IAA, the International Astronautic Academy? It's the places where NASA and everybody has to really, this council that has to release anything they find in space or anywhere has to go through them if it's going to be publicized or not. Well, who the heck are they? Look that up. IAA, what I just said. Very interesting. Things like that and the stuff we have going around in our skies is we live on such a concocted world,
I'm just wondering if they had this balloon distraction didn't kind of backfire, because whereas nobody looks up, as my husband says, nobody even looks at the night sky when they're out. Nobody looks up. They're always looking down at their devices or whatever. now everybody's looking up, and I'm wondering if that hasn't backfired a bit, because now they may start seeing things they never knew really was there before, and just noticing the little black things that were flying through the air really fast, and you go, what the heck is that? Or the little white things that you see screaming across the sky, what the heck is that? And I think people are starting to even see, I'm sure that huge nuts and bolt flying saucer could go across most of the world, and most people wouldn't even look up and see it, because they wouldn't even be looking up. So I think people looked up a lot more in the olden days, because that's how they figured out what the weather was going to be. But now we don't even bother to even look up at the clouds and see what's going on.
I used to see a timeline where there were these very large, like, Legion craft that pulled up, this materialized basically over several large cities for like maybe about a minute. Not long enough for any type of war or anything to happen, but for just to change consciousness here. And, some of these craft emit that frequency that seems to nullify a fear to a degree, but it wouldn't take much of that to change things here. But right now, with all this stage stuff we have, they pretty much be able to avert that timeline. I think avert it. So it's I think when dealing with these whole things that are time wars and time jumps and time shifts and how they really occur, they occur at times of high solar activity. And we've just been in one. When people start noticing the time edits and these Mandela effects and all these things occur during these high solar activity times,
It's not us forgetting things. Yeah, it's like, I'm sure I did that. Or like, did I not say that already? Or, it's just the little things in your own life that you realize, like, oh, that's really weird. That's been happening a lot lately. Am I losing the plot, or what's going on? Like,
I see a very interesting comment here. I'm looking over the comments. It's from Melinda Lane. My master teacher, Ramatha, directed us to go around behind the light and talk directly to divine and see our option, take the light year and reincarnate. Well, personally, I've got to ask first, who are they and how do they know that first, okay? But what I've seen, okay, is that's nonsense, that actually going into the light, in the light, are the loved ones, okay, not going around it. To me, that doesn't even make sense, going around it. What you're doing there is possibly going more into darkness and keeping yourself trapped here, okay? And I think that when you see as a representation, the movie that gives a ton of them is the movie Ghost. And the movie Ghost, when he comes out of that theater with Demi Moore, he gets in the struggle with the dude. The gun goes off, he chases after him. Okay, and then when he gets back to his body, she's holding his body. He was unaware, and what's going on? The light starts coming, and what's going on? He kind of starts going through a panoramic life review where things start flashing in front of you. He's seeing the statue that they were pulling up, and it's dropping, and then all of a sudden he's back with the light. His light's going to what's going on? And then he starts looking at his body, and he starts running more towards him. He goes, no. He started running towards her and him. And the light stayed on for a minute, and then it went out as he's running. I cannot begin to tell you the amount of earthbounds I've had that tell me that. Okay? And then within this light, like in a life between lives regression, okay, the guide will come. A guide will come, angelic or not. And I've had them, they come and present with the client. It's many different things. It's been an office where they have ledgers, a library where there's ledgers, sometimes a ship, sometimes a lake where they're seeing past lives or lives in the water. I mean, that happens, but the guide shows themselves naturally through this process. It's not even, not even somebody, the hypnotist has to say, hey, are you seeing a guide yet? You don't have to do that. This happens through the process. It's who and what we are. And in the integration of what you learn and what you're supposed to learn when you incarnate the next time. It's fascinating. And it's not it's a choice that goes in there, even more than I thought, okay? And this is coming just from the regressions I've done through this. It's very fascinating, it really is. But we can't access the most of what we are. Just paying the bills takes about 100% of our free energy. So,
And so when you go to the light, you have a chance to return and visit your loved ones again once you've been there, right? Is that true too? Like when you do
yeah.
mediumship, those people that have crossed over, and then they've decided to come back to communicate and say, "Hi, what's going on?" We're hanging around with you.
Yeah, I think it says something for that quantum entanglement that quantum physicists talk about. All things connect in that way. And once they're in the light, I've seen several times they come back, just like they come and help the earthbounds cross over. But they come and help, and it's like the love frequency and everything. But they don't stay. They still go back and then come back, but it's a definite thing. They come to help and things, and that happens. That's one of the changes we can make, when we go into the light. And for all I know, it's multiple existence at that point. You've already incarnated somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah.
What I mean?
There's a little bit of you here, and there's a little bit of you there, and there's a little bit of you there. So maybe.
So I've heard that before, Melinda. That's a great question, but I've heard that before. Somebody that I used to associate with, was telling people that if the light comes, run away from the light, go into the dark, and go away from the light, and then wait to hear a sound, and then follow that. What? Now, there's such thing as chanting and things that help people cross over, but that was horrible advice to give someone, And when the light comes, look for your loved ones. Look for the guides. You know what I mean? Don't run for it. At least see what it is. And a lot of earthbounds have told me I got away from it because not just did they feel cheated, but I didn't know what it was. And they're in shock still. And we do have free will, and it's strong. When you do like a Patrick Swayze and say, no, and he ran away, it stopped. You know what I mean? And I've had so many earthbounds describe that to me. It's uncanny. So that's my answer to that. Great question, Melinda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because
I
just
had
caught
an
my eye. I
experience
apologize to take us off
before.
track, but I looking over here. I'm seeing they're popping up now. So
I had an experience back when I was just beginning to wake up, and I was seeing a transpersonal awareness counselor who was kind of showing me things a little bit. Anyway, my grandmother had died, and it was such a big experience. And then I went and talked to her about it, of course. And then I went home, and she calls me back later and says, "Your grandma attached to me, and you're the one who has to send them across. Your grandmother's like breaking the rules. She's like interfering with me at times that she's not supposed to. So I'm going to tell you how to do it, and you do it." And she's telling me that she's not the only one there. You're going to have to cross a few more over from the family. I guess they're all like hanging out or something. And so I did. Is this the kind of thing that you're talking about too, the people attaching and stuff?
yeah, this is more like a joining. It's we have to really just, even psychology, they've proven that actually trauma stores in certain organs. Certain traumas store in certain organs. And these earthbounds there's usually attached to one of those areas. So not just do the demonics do that, but also the earthbound spirits. And then they start expressing them. So then from that area, they get into the energy field and then start expressing themselves as negative behavior patterns, which are normally the ones that kept them here. Like for example, I have one that told me, one of the ones that's more resistant, says, you try to trick me. How am I going to trick you? Well, you're trying to get me to go in that light. I'm not going in that light. I'm not going in it. I said, well, why not? First you can't stay with the client, but why not? Because in that light, I'll have to change, and I can't have another drink. And what had happened, we were alcoholic, and they had got on this client and jumped this client at a bar, and it had pushed this client into being an alcoholic. And they have a disposition to alcoholism, and this earthbound pushed them right into it, ruined their life.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question, Teresa?
Well,
Or no?
yeah, I think it does. I was seeing the different categories, or
Yeah,
I don't know if you label
yeah.
them, but yeah, the different vibrations, really. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of it's kind of a trip, But what I noticed though, that the ones though that are like have crossed over into light and come back to help, they're on the outside of the energy field also, and they have a totally different thing about them when they communicate too. You know what I mean? It's a whole nother thing. It's always on the love frequency thing, and it comes through like that. At least I can only speak for me, okay? But that's what it seems like for the most part. It's something that I think that, like, okay, all right. Okay, example, I had someone that I knew that had passed, and I was pretty sure they did not cross over. And what I did was I used another medium, put them under, and then went in too and grabbed the person, brought the person to the location. And this was in an apartment complex near a river where I live. And what happened is I got the individual, brought them there, but then the room filled up with earthbounds in this complex. I've been there a long time. Some seeing what was going on, somewhat now. So I crossed over like 8 or 9, and I said, "Hey, no more," because the person I brought there was standing behind them. And behind them, you know what I mean? And it was like that person that stands in the back of the concert or sits in the back of the class, you know, that type of a deal, that class, back of the crowd. And so that is telling me that's kind of what you're talking about too. So in that way, you know, it's just, but it's a trip. And what I will say from my experience, I swear, the amount of population of earthbound spirits on this planet is, I think, more numerous than the living. It's that heavy here.
I believe it.
I've had some that I cross over, and they did tell me, you know, when I asked, you know, where they joined with the client, they will say, well, this castle in like Romania or something. This is somebody that was in the Air Force and was touring places when they were in certain other countries, and they were picking up earthbounds these places, and the earthbounds start talking to you. You can tell they're not demonic, but their frame of reference is just off. They you know, the time is not there like it is here, so they're saying concepts that are very, you know, old and different, outdated things, or just a different frame of reference. It's very interesting, you know. Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Gives me so many more questions, Barry, really.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't want people to get mad. Just be talking about the UFOs.
No, you know, like I think it's like so. Yeah, I would wondering if, you know, the UFOs and the departed and the not departed are all kind of it's all multidimensional, right? It's some things are here and some things are on another plane, and that's why they blink in and out. They're just going through dimensions, and people are here and then they're not, and they wander around, and you wonder, oh, you've changed a lot. Now you're wondering, like, okay, so is somebody attached to you? Is that why you've changed a lot, or like what's going on? You know, now I've got so many questions. So.
You know, sometimes in the contact scenario, at least for me, I know it was also about them making us aware of our soul life memories. We can't remember. Some of us have incarnated here dozens of times and can't remember it, let alone the other star systems, the other universes, galaxies.
Yeah.
You know, I was forced when I started dealing with Dr. Rudy Shields. You know, I always wanted to talk to many scientists about my experiences. A couple of them took interest. He was one. And, you know, he had, you know, forced me to deal with mathematically, beyond my computation ability, obviously, that I was dealing with during my experiences. Many of these beings were from different universes. I tried to, no, it's different galaxies. So many, not 800, 900 million light years out, like they told me. And he was saying, they told you that, and said, but they're telling you another universe. And he started explaining it in so many different ways. I had to acknowledge it, you know, or being on board a craft that is capable of generating these makos, these black holes, these wormholes, and then choosing the one with the path of most coherency and then changing to match its destination for it goes there. Whole nother thing going on the universal level. I had to accept that. I saw it happening. I didn't realize that's fully what it was. And the age that happened to me at about 18, I was like, oh God, why am I seeing this? Why is this happening to me? You know what I mean? Although it was good and positive, it just made it hard to go back and do your normal stuff.
Yeah.
Go to your normal job. I was in classes. I'm tripping out. I was in college. I was tripped out. You know, what's thinking about that and not being able to focus on my studies. You know, all that stuff goes on. So I think that our society and what we're seeing now with just right here in the comments and with the internet and everything, things are changing. It's becoming much more permissible for us to speak out. Like I said, I'm by no means special. We're all unique, but everybody that's a contactee is because they're all different. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, I think that what it shows is how many of us are communicating now and raising that consciousness and changing things, making it not so absurd. So you're a contactee, or you see ghosts, or whatever is paranormal. People aren't laughing at you saying, "Oh, he's crazy," and that's starting to happen less because something happens to them. And then they're paying attention to people like us. Questions when everything's fine to laugh at others until something happens to you. Move into the wrong house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or have some pass through your space. I don't know. Teresa Holmes is asking, are we here to help the Earthbound's crossover? Is that one of our purposes? So it's obviously your purpose, but is it everybody's purpose? I guess is what she may be asking.
I can't say everyone, but outside of, I think, just the way we prepare for. All right. Boy, I'm picking up a lot here. Okay. The way that we prepare for death is different. Just yesterday, there was a fundraiser for my cousin, Dwayne Littleton. He's got terminal cancer. Oh. And the way he is accepting death, he got his urine and things, and the way he was at the event last night, the way he's accepting death, and the amount of love he's showing and joy, it's unreal. It brought tears to a bunch of people's eyes repeatedly. You know what I mean? So some in the ways that we cross over and we prepare for death, and maybe the way we do funerals, as opposed to people that are feeling sorry for themselves because the person's not there anymore. You know what I mean? And not celebrating while they're still here, as we just did with Dwayne. Things like that, I think, is what we all need to change with the practices of death to aid in our loved ones crossing over, because we've got these angelics with us. They're keeping track of what we're doing. We've got these guides, all sorts of stuff. I'll tell you what, when I just did an In Between Lives regression a couple of days ago, and when the guide will come and they'll go to this place that I call the place of translation, where it's like a ledger or something. They go through the life and what's learned and all these things. And a lot of times the trauma will come up and help so people realize they're carrying that trauma in this life. Okay. And exactly where it comes from. And it's something that they may be working on or going past. It's fascinating, but it's right there. But in this situation, okay, instead of this being like an office or a library or somewhere that's somewhat like that, this place of translation, it was a craft, a very large craft. And the guide presented itself as some type of a 7-foot Sasquatch in some type of a uniform. And it changes into a golden ball, back into a person. And it tells the client that, well, actually, when we manifest, we look like this, but it's something different that would be perhaps a genetic bearer of what we have here as Sasquatch. And I can't dismiss this, because just last week or so, I did this really long interview with these guys.
Brian Bland. The Porky Beans show. I was just going to bring them up.
Michael Harrell and Brian Bland, the Pork and Beans guy.
Yeah, long show.
I interacted with Michael for years. He started communicating with me when I first came forward. And he's worked with Ray Hernandez and some other stuff. Cool cat. But, he kept bringing up repeatedly about these Sasquatch that were on these different crafts that were of more galactic origin, and how they're working with life carriers and things like that, and how they're also more in communication with the people in Peru right now, those particular craft and Sasquatch, some of them, and taller and the smaller ones too. I thought that was fascinating. And here this ties right in to this client. And this client was not really into the Sasquatch thing, but they had encounters, okay, that I had kind of helped them discover, that they were unknowing when they were going on these retreats. That's what was interacting with them, but now they know why. You're dealing with something there totally different. It blew me away, because I didn't expect that. And instead of this place of translation being an office, it's a type of a chamber, a crystalline chamber that incorporates all the life memories, and it prepares you for your next destination of your choosing of incarnation. You got several. You're choosing. So that's another, there again, the choice was there. And believe me, it's not me. Believe me, it's not me saying, "Hey, are you seeing your guide now? Is it a big Sasquatch?" I mean, it's not. Is it dressed like it was in for the Federation? I mean, no. I'm not.
I blame everything on Star Trek, because I can relate almost every episode to what you're talking to, is a Star Trek episode. Like going into the library and choosing where you're going to live because your planet's going to blow up. So you're going to live in this timeline, and going in or being stuck in.
Oh, you mean the Teletron with Kirk? That's a good reference. Original. Yeah. The Mr.
You're a real Trekkie. You know the titles of the episodes. Yeah. I just remember them. Yeah.
That's a frame of reference for those of us that are having. I've been criticized that he uses references in entertainment. Well, what else was I supposed to use? What, A-Team? The A-Team wasn't talking about this stuff. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's a thing that a lot of times we'll see things in science fiction that are either being transmitted or representing things we've seen during contacts. There's what else do you have for a
Or
frame
we're
of reference?
using them. This is Mike. Hello. This is my
Yeah.
handheld computer and tricorder and whatever else you want to use. So
This is true. I have two comments, and I'll try to remember them real fast and get out of the way. One, I read Brian Bland's past lives a couple of times, and I don't have his permission right now, but I've talked to him about this before, so I think it's okay. But that's the first time reading his past life was when I seen him beyond, right? Beyond our universe and beyond. He was a healer Sasquatch on a ship. And I had to try to explain that. There's a ship. You're on it, and you're a healer, and you're still here healing the land that you walk on, even though you're doing other things. Well, that's a whole interesting thing. But I explained him. So that's the first time I met the Sasquatch on a ship. And then you're talking about how shows explain to us, because you have to admit, some of the people who make the shows and put them together are pretty gifted in bringing stuff through. I had stuff I could not describe to anyone until after I saw Stranger Things. So it's like, oh, you know that show. Now you know what I'm talking about. So then I was finally able to describe what was stuck in here,
Yeah. And that's important. Like the things like with Gene Roddenberry, for example. I'd read a book a long time ago called Earth, the Only Planet of Choice, and in that book, they're talking to being channeled the Council of Nine, and there's a group in there asking questions. One of them is Gene Roddenberry. When I was dealing with Dr. Shields, we were talking weekly actually. He had told me that he's pretty up there in late 80s, and he had said that when he worked at the observatory, Gene Roddenberry back in the 50s was a highway patrol, a chip. He's like an Eric Estrada. He was a chip, a highway patrol officer in California. And he would come in there and have lunch in the observatory with the astronomers. And he said he'd sit there and ask questions like, what would it be like to go faster than the speed of light? And all these other things that were, connected. And he was, obviously figuring out Star Trek at that time. But that's 10 years prior. So very interesting. You know what I mean?
Was it the Griffith Park Observatory?
That one I can't tell you. I don't know.
Okay.
He mentioned several different observatories to me that were,
Okay.
at that point I was still just kind of listed it, and I'll listen to the story at that point. It's pretty cool because he's not Dr. Shields, he's not experienced or contactee. He's a scientist, and that's cool.
Okay.
But he's open enough trying to figure out and trying to incorporate what he's found out scientifically about the MACOs, magnetically eternally collapsing objects that are black holes, and the data that they've got from them is not at all like what we're being told. When I was a kid, there was that movie, The Black Hole, if you remember that, with the robots. I love that movie, but that's everything that goes in a black hole is crushed. That's not really what it is. What they really are and the way they operate is like the hard drives of the universe. They're like the hard drives. We talk about the Akashic Records, Teresa. I know you work with the Akashic Records.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like outside, the first time I heard him, Edgar Casey mentioned what they were, the records of space and time. But what is that? But these black holes, what they actually have are these MACOs, okay, that are inside these magnetically eternally collapsing objects. And when information goes in to the black hole, okay, it creates a copy of it, a perfect copy, called the quantum hologram. So in that way, you've got, the universe information wrapping around the MACO, the same way the accretion disk looks around a black hole. But what you've got is the information of the universe wrapping all the way to the outside to present time, from the beginning to the end. So at least the beginning of the creators creating of the MACOs anyway. So that is the Akashic Records. And how do they operate? These MACOs, they operate on the frequencies like brain waves, like they're calling conscious waves now. And these conscious waves occur in two ways, helical and spherical. And we have in our bodies these things that are called microtubules. And going to the brain for our conversation here, okay, We have the mirror neuron network, the brain, the microtubules make up the neuron network of the brain. And we have something called the mirror neuron network. And what that is similar to what I just described to you with the information, the quantum hologram. Okay. And in that way, when I'm talking to you in the audience right now about my encounters or describing this, you're able to see it and kind of live it. That is the mirror network doing that. It's beyond the grab, release, reflexing things from the monkeys. You know what I mean? But that takes us into just how much those. So if we're going to access these Makos, we can do it consciously through the brain waves. And, you know, and that led me to ask some people like Dr. Shields, I said, okay, you know, how fast do you all think the speed of thought is? And he gave me some experiment of something, I can't tell you. But he said that they estimated that it's 100,000 times the speed of light.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
these aliens are probably, they're traveling, like Dr. Greer says, at the speed of thought.
Well, yeah, and think of it something else.
Yeah.
If we're dealing with civilizations that Dr. Kako and everybody talks about, the type 3, 4 civilizations, when you get to the higher ones, they're actually using not just a fabric of space, but wormholes, these Makos, as their prime power source. So when doing that, we're dealing with civilizations that may no longer be in existence, but they still exist in the Mako, in the quantum hologram. And then they can use the quantum hologram to access us and give us experiences through our brain waves. That's why our will is so important. You know what I mean? And we get saturated with like encounters, negative encounters, grays, reptilians, and that just saturates us so much that when you start having from a higher civilization trying to interact with you this way through the Akashic record, through the Mako, it gets turned by our power, our force of will into something that's a negative encounter. We are that strong, and we warp it. You know, during my early encounters, they communicated to me your thoughts affect the warp fields of the warp fields of your thoughts affect reality. I didn't know what that meant fully when I was a kid, because for me that means warp physics, trouble with reality. What I don't thoughts. It didn't, you know, I get it now. How much we can change reality with our mind. It's really a trip, especially when you're dealing with something we're talking about there, the Akashic records. So when you're dealing with that now, you know, you can access all the other ancient civilizations you want if you can get specific. And the further you go out, if you look at it as a crescent disc, the further out you go as current times universe, the further you go in is towards the beginning. You know, and it made sense because when I started going out with what the beings told me, the insectoid Xandar told me as a kid, I was, you know, sorry, but I was, when you're the president of a non-human, loving, feeling, or not, ask a bunch of questions. Got to make sure they're not deceivers, okay? And, you know, he telling me things like, where are you from? I asked where you're from, and he's answering me before I can formulate it even in my mind, telling me you won't understand. I thought I was heavy because I watched Doctor Who, but he's saying go 900 billion light years out beyond the space-time continuum. Okay, I didn't know what that meant. You know, and then telling me, since you don't understand, focus on the third and fourth planets outside of Pluto. And I thought then, I'm to the back, it's just deception, because there are no planets outside of Pluto. You know, I think even the moon Chiron wasn't found then. But since then, you know, then fast forward, you know, like 25, 30 years later, or 20 years later, I'm sitting in my office and I'm reading this discovery about trans-Neptunian objects. That is that other Kuiper belt that exists outside of Pluto out there. And they think even with its orbit that it might be orbiting a brown dwarf. This could even be a dual solar system here. So they're dealing with that. But anyway, these trans-Neptunian objects, they've got several of them that are nearly the size of Pluto, whatever they're calling them, planetoids or whatever. But I mean, you know, and he was telling me during this communication that the third and fourth planets outside of Pluto, there are these bases that they use as jumping off points into this solar system because they have problem with the density.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, and I connect that later to what they're telling me about when in this atmosphere, the metals and the microwaves, very dangerous for them. I call it the M&M effect. You know, we don't think about the amount of metals that we're inhaling here that causes acid rain and all that. Those
So we are now because of Ohio's train wreck, and it's all blowing up here in Ontario. So thank you so much. Black snow. I'm sure if I melted it, we'd have some of Ohio's black snow here. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so you wonder also the chemtrails. So why are they putting that stuff in the atmosphere?
I mean, when you start looking
weather
at
modification, or is it alien modification?
When I start reading earlier stuff they were saying about the chemtrails, that some just disappeared, the stuff that it has in it, cryptosporidium, these black nanodots, these things, and Morgellons, all that stuff is coming out of these chemtrails, and it's beyond, because where I'm from, I'm from the air capital, straight up. Air capital is where I'm from. And I see contrails all the time, but they're different. It's not like what I see when I was at that ranch in Oregon. I was seeing these things that spray, and it was spreading out. It's totally different. They didn't dissipate either, like normally. So, something else going on. And it's a shame, especially looking at Morgellons, and that's a fearful disease, if nothing else. And that's got That's got nanodots on it and all these other things that are, right now they're starting to find that, like, even those nanodots, those black dots, they're using those, like they can put those on craft and make them holographic and visible to a degree with metamaterials. That's something very real. Look up metamaterials, anybody, of invisibility. They've taken that a whole nother step forward. We just don't hear about it.
No, we're not supposed to, because we're just worker bees down here.
Stay asleep. Just stay asleep.
Stay asleep.
Pay those bills. Raise those kids. They shut off.
We'll give you, we'll raise the price of eggs, and that you'll be fine. Oh yeah. Let's get all that vegan plastic into you.
And I don't want to sound like I'm a doom and gloom guy either, but I think it's just better being aware and really of what we're dealing with here on this planet. You know what I mean? And something else, okay, I want me to mention this too. Something else when dealing with this fake shoot down and fake invasion is something that was termed by the author Mac Toonies, Toonies. He wrote a book called Cryptoterrestrials. And in this book, Cryptoterrestrials, what he's supposing and saying is that we have a race of beings here on Earth that use technology to keep us and suggestion to keep us looking in space, keep looking us out, invasions coming in, all these other things, keep looking in space when they're right here beside us with technology far beyond us. A lot of the craft we're seeing are theirs. Some of the cryptids we're seeing are affiliated with that. He called that cryptoterrestrials, and poor Mac met a kind of a negative death when after he released that book. So there's something to think about, cryptoterrestrials, especially when dealing with
subterranean
things, especially submerged bases and things of that nature, aquatics and all that. Preston Dennis done a lot of work on that on his USO. It's worth looking into.
Yeah. A lot of there's the beings, and then there's the beings, and then there's the beings, is what I always say. So, and then there's the ones.
Isn't it exciting?
Yeah. It's nice to have your eyes open. I mean, yeah, if you've ever been touched by a ghost, then you realize there's another dimension just beyond your awareness. So how many other dimensions beyond your awareness is there, right? So it's kind of interesting. Cool. It's been a very interesting. Let's not leave it so long again, and we won't wait till they've shot down 6 Chinese, because the Chinese, of course, to Americans are about as alien as the aliens are to them. So let's have that monster now. We'll just make China the big monster. If it can't be Russia, it can be China, and if it's God knows. Anyways, it's over there. So
yeah. And and I think it's people continue to come together and not falling for that. And I can't say that they'll ever really give us disclosure, but I think it's happening with things like this right now, that they can't stop. Straight up, they can't silence everybody. Too many people are waking up, and so many people are boring awake right now. So
So once they sort of soft disclosure the Tic Tacs, yeah, there's stuff out there we don't know about. Everything's quieted down, so they're just letting people sit with that. But I think anybody that was born in the '60s has been fed a steady diet of there's something out there. There's something more than out there. First it's Star Trek, then it's E.T. and whatever else. So
do you guys remember? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'll tell you this real quick because I want to tell you this before we sign off because I'm getting blasted this whole time. Okay, so basically, I really want to encourage you to get at least down to theta regression for those UFOs you saw. Are they here for us? Find out, and because what I'm getting is
I'm going to get in touch with you. I know I've meant to do that. Yeah,
that's important in terms of it's something that like would have happened before the drone era. There's so many drones now, it tricks us sometimes, but this is something that was non-drone related. So yeah.
Absolutely. The drones triggered all the memories is what's happening.
I think maybe you were calling them a few days before and they showed up. There was just a little time lag in before when you asked something and they showed. It's weird down here like that, but that's what I'm picking up anyway. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Teresa.
No. We'll have to. I've meant to get in touch with you, but of course, there's always things that stop me. So my husband's like crazy. Anyways, no, Teresa, go ahead. You go ahead, darling.
Well, I forgot.
Oh no, you've got your questions too.
Oh, that's quite, yeah. Well, okay, one question I had, it was similar about, Teresa Holmes is what she's now. Do you have any information about the planets in the Orion Belt that are activating the pyramids all over the Earth? She has that question, but I was wondering, they're also saying that Betelgeuse is starting to go supernova. And I don't know how true that is, or people just jumping on it to make quick clickbait videos, you know what I mean? So what's up with Orion or Orion's belt? Do you know any of that right now real quick?
I don't care for the Orion area personally, but that's not about me. But all I know that there are definitely stargates there, big ones, and it's an active place. So I would, and when dealing with what all Earth is attuned to, that's definitely one area. But I think another area is the Triangulum Galaxy. People need to pay attention to also, and the cycle before this one, how many of the beings that came here that were more recorded, like especially in Indian legend, of being 25 feet tall. You know what I mean? And these different type of beings and the melanin dominant beings that were 20 feet tall that were here long before this current cycle, they came from Triangulum, which is another galaxy that will one day collide with Andromeda and Earth, Andromeda and the Milky Way. Will all collide one day. But interesting, this we don't hear about that as much, but some of the things we see on the hieroglyphs and other things that are representing these pyramids and triangles isn't always about Orion. Sometimes it's about Triangulum.
Okay.
Food for thought.
Awesome. Cool? I love that.
It's very cool.
Oh,
sometimes our concepts are limited to this galaxy and local places like Lyra, Sirius, Arcturus. Yeah. But the truth is, look at the Hubble Deep Space and the James Webb, what they're finding out. There are trillions of galaxies. Yeah. They're in the way trillions now. And to think that just there are these certain places that come here, like these local places, is not correct. We're dealing with the planets being visited by thousands of different species, interdimensionals, extraterrestrials. I mean, really, it's like, man, it's a trip. All bets are off. And we have to really expand our parameters of contact and the modalities. Things like what Ray Hernandez did with that survey was brilliant. And nobody talks about it. Because what? It didn't show all the negative stuff we hear. All experiences are negative. Oh, everything. Even the stuff that survey showed about the reptilians shows that what we're being told isn't fully correct.
Yeah.
I'm not going one way or the other with it, but there's more going to that there. Why did that survey of a couple of thousand experiencers, when it said was your experience with reptilians positive, negative, unknown, or negative? The positive was large. And then the unknown was probably maybe the biggest, and the negative was a small percentage. And just when I first saw that graph, I was like, what? What do you hear about the reptilians? That should be all the way 100% negative, right? And then when the part that was people that didn't know put down, they had to fill that out. And Ray showed it to me. And some people were saying mostly that the experience was kind of tainted because they were frightened by them. But their appearance was just too much, but they didn't do anything to them. Nothing negative. So it tells you, how many different types are there, Saurians, reptilians, Dracos, whatever. But something we're being told isn't all clearly there. And that's what all of that research that Ray did shows. And it's like weird. I don't see him at conferences talking. Nobody has him on shows. It's interesting to me. You know what I mean? But let's talk about some grays and some implants and reptilians and SSP, which definitely happens. But the fact that there's some type of an energy field we come into, we incarnate here, that makes us devoid of soul life memories is also some type of a scalar energy they're using to permeate people that are receiving contacts through the divine field or whatever, and they're turning that into something different. They're attacking people through governmental societies or whatever, and psychically, on the psychic level, bad. I've had some clients now I've had to deal with, and I'm not an SSP person, all right? I try to reach out for some of those people. I don't disrespect or discount anybody's experiences, but mine weren't that way. And I've tried to find like some people like Tony Rodriguez, really cool. We just finding some similarities in what we know, and just things is cool. People like that reach out, you know what I mean? But the fact of people that are under attack with that frequency and that auto suggestion of that, it's unreal. And then with that, something happens. It'll do something too. There's agencies, dark forces promoting that. And it's too bad, but that's where we live,
And that's the way humans have always been. They always have to have an enemy to make them look better or to compare them. Well, these things are really bad. We're not that bad, but these things are really, really bad. And whether it's race or it's religion or it's color or it's whatever, they just blow all the microscope onto that. So they're out of the picture completely,
Yeah. Even things as simple as, when you really look at like the work that was done with Dr. Livingood concerning the crop circles and what he found out about not the microwaves, especially, and everything that those stems are exposed to, and something called electron avalanche, which in return makes these seeds like twice as resilient. And when they were grown, these ones that were exposed to this high plasma energy that creates the crop circles actually yield like twice as much to 3 times as much the product as the ones that have not been exposed. And when you start looking at these things and what they're showing us, some of the patterns too, is it a way for us to combat food shortage?
Yeah.
But no one's talking about that. That's the scientific stuff that man found before he died.
Exciting.
I'm not seeing it replicated or anything or people talking about it. This is very interesting, and when dealing with, some type of possible free energy devices that some of these patterns may give also is very interesting. The whole crop circle thing.
Oh, that's
I'm waiting for one to show up in my fields. I've really been asking them.
Yeah, high energy plasma,
Yeah.
That's something else. I was very interested in that. So when I first started giving Jessica Jones targets, I tasked her with one of those. And it was the ones that were those plasma balls that were seen making it. And she started getting information coming through about these being like kind of what we could call more or less this type of plasma, these ones being more of a God energy, light, Christ, this type of energy.
The orange ones, yeah.
There's hope. So she's getting this, there's hope, and a really positive message. Because we know some of these crop circles are negative plasma doing it because people get in the circles and feel sick. And the patterns are bad. But there's something else going on. There's something trying to mess that up. So interesting. When I dealt with John Vivinco, we did an extra video about it. And I was like, want to know, we talked about the crop circles. And what he had said as a portal, like on Mount Adams there, and these portals that are near these crop circle areas, you have like, thousands of beings trying to squeeze through all at once. So it's like, all 3 of us trying to put our head in a ketchup bottle, squeeze it through. Slim chance at best. But when actually those that get through, when they emerge in this dimension, they come out in collective conscious form, in an orb type of form, in collective consciousness form. It's something about the the laws between, there and here crossing over through the portal. Very fascinating.
That's so.
Food, but again, food for thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all, I never thought about orbs that way. So that's kind of cool to think about them that way as well. That's awesome.
Love it.
And the quantum hologram we talked about. Beings that are exploring the universe through those Akashic records. They're using orbs too, as in that is a form that allows for galactic interstellar travel, interdimensional travel.
They send them out and see stuff and come back.
And that's why people see like sometimes faces in those orbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quantum hologram again.
Yeah, I like my orange orbs that appear over here, and it's interesting. They're big, but there's the small ones. So Teresa, you have a couple of questions for Barry, and
okay, we have only 2 questions because the third question is about if you've ever had any contact, and we know for sure that you have. So the other 2 questions you'll probably be familiar with, but I forgot to remind you about these. I think 1, what song's your theme song? Like you're walking out there on that stage and everybody's clapping, but you're hearing your song playing. What song is playing for you?
Electric Avenue, Eddie Grant. I don't know.
I like that one.
I mean, that's a great answer. I like what's the other one? Al Jarreau. This Love Is Forever by Al Jarreau. I like that one too.
I met him once. How neat.
Oh, really? That's cool. That's cool.
A billion years ago, but back when Solid Gold was on TV.
Oh wow, that was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh God.
I was right. I was a generation that come up right between the end of Solid Gold and the beginning of Video Soul with Donnie Simpson.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then MTV come out somewhere and do Barry's jumping around. They wanted their MTV. Very interesting.
Youngin. Yeah, for sure.
And then, okay, the last question then is, what crystal do you work with?
Or do you...
I know you hold a wand. I want to know, what is your wand made out of?
2 of them I hold sometimes. One, this is this Anika. This Anika is made out of rose quartz. And it just has a really good vibration to it. And the symbol, certain geometric symbols bring us good energy. Yeah. And this one here is just a quartz crystal, actually.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah. I like smoky quartz. I like citrine. I work with little labradorite too, and several things there. Really great book is that first book by Melody. Kaleidoscope.
Yeah, I've got it.
I had that. Yeah.
I've got it in my bookshelf
right hard to get now, aren't they? She passed or something.
And I've had it for 15, 20 years. Yeah,
that one in the pocket book of crystals. Those 2 books are really good.
Yeah,
really good. I mean, that was an excellent piece of work she put out. As far as anything I've ever wanted to look up, as far as gem, mineral, crystal wise, she's got something on it. So and I enjoyed double terminated regular quartz too. It's pretty cool.
I've got tektite on today, just in honor of you. So,
right on. Thank you.
Tektite on and some citrine, apparently, too.
A reason I enjoy crystals, one would be when dealing with these experiences, trying to figure out, asking what's the ship made of and things like that, and they're showing me like these 4-way compound. One is in metamaterials that they're mining from planets that are devoid of sometimes atmospheres, but especially Van Allen belts. And that these planets have solar radiation from those stars that bombards the metal in a way that we're unfamiliar with here on Earth. So that's the way that they're making type of metamaterials from that. Okay. And then also a quasi crystal type of technology, which goes into the crystals I've seen on board craft that glow inside and have this bioluminescence or chemical luminescence that they're emitting from inside. Okay. So you got a quasi crystal, you've got DNA with the crew. Okay. Yes, and this compound is mixed together and then grown over like a mako, a small one. So that's, really interesting in terms of crystal technology. And I think that is our future. Like they show on the original Superman with Christopher Reeve and and
Oh yeah.
Brando, everything was crystals in there. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
became very fascinated with that movie when I had an experience at the age of 17 where I see a craft morph from a saucer into, actually 18, morphing from a craft into a type of a ship that crystalline with these stalactites things coming out of it, and then like these, like almost look like a molecule, but it's moving in the sky, and it's glowing on the inside. It's growing this bioluminescence from the inside. And I'll tell you, to sit there and witness this thing morph into that really blew me away.
Wow.
But what I know now is I was witnessing a craft that was changing its structure, its pattern of unfoldment to meet the destination of a universe it was traveling to. And you know, our universe is based on the spin. You've got other universes that can be based on something else, which could be the cubical, why you see cubes on these ships sometimes, spherical, triangles, amorphous metals, all sorts of different things these other universes could be. So that's what I was seeing, this thing doing a pattern of unfoldment to match its destination. But I'll tell you, I can talk about it now, but when I saw it at that age, it blew me away.
Wow.
Took me
Yeah.
off. You know what I mean? Certain things, it's cool. Like I sit up here and talk about many things. The holographic principle, it all sounds real cool. But when you see this and perceive this perceptually, it blows you away. Makes you feel
Especially
like a kid
when we haven't had that Hollywood like pushed into us, you know, like making things normal again. You know, it was before that, before we had all the visuals to sort of set us up for it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. True.
And here we are talking on the internet from three different places in space and time, and different time zones, and we're thinking that this is normal. But you know, back 40 years ago, we would have thought we were crazy.
Yeah.
Bunch of Star Trek stuff, man.
Yeah, it really is, and thank goodness for that and Doctor Who and things like that. And you know, like for me, the part of accepting that these craft are organic and just alive, and the amount of sentientness, the amount of consciousness, the sentient awareness. Okay, that for me, even I underestimated that, you know, until, you know, some time ago recently, and really understanding like why on some of these experiences I'm walking around in these craft, I'm sick as heck, so I'm not going to be much of a threat anyway, but I'm not being escorted. You've got, you know, some of them are telepathy with you, but they're not all physical. So it's not like you're being escorted. But then I realized something, okay, that actually I was underestimating how sentient these craft actually are. I thought they were maybe aware on the level of like a microorganism, like an amoeba or a flagellum or something like that. No, these things are aware on the level that we're dealing with space organisms, like I just said, grown in space. Okay, even right now, when they make a construction of something like the president's plane, the windows are bonded in like a zero gravity environment. It makes it super bonded. So they're growing these things in space, and as organic creatures, the lifespan is unknown to us. It could be thousands of years, maybe, who knows, longer, millions, who knows. But being on board this craft, I realize now this craft had access to my soul life memories. It knew what I was going to do, what I'm about everything. Wow. The same way that I think a lot of Earth's natural animals have access to that genetic or to that soul life memory, that life memories more for that, you know, and how they have access to that. When I give an example of that, like the crows, there are these crows by where I used to live that I would go feed all the time, get in trouble for. But, you know, like I had a relationship with those crows. When I go back to that place 30 some years later, there's still crows there. When I arrived, they respond to me very uniquely.
Yeah.
It shows that, you know, they're always the same ones so many years later, but their ancestors, their descendants, have that genetic memory of me. And I'm sure
they've been told stories through the generations from crow to crow.
And I know Sasquatch is the same. I know the Sasquatch that I interacted with, or whatever, that they had some sort of access to life, soul life memories. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. You know what I mean? So That's interesting. So humanity's the one getting the shaft, right? Get the old shaft, humanity.
Well, yeah, I think that's part
And,
of the thing, the part of the learning. Otherwise, if we were a soul, we'd know everything, or we have access to figure it out. But when we're a human, we really have to work at it, and that's the whole point. We really have to work at this life, and because that's what we came here to do, is work at this life and figure it out and feel all those things, and we need to feel so we can experience them and take them back to our soul life later on.
Hey, Melinda Lane, I saw her again. Interesting. Keep coming back to her. It's weird. That's cool. We love the same crystals. They're telling me check out the new quasi-crystal technology that the scientists are doing. How it has these different lattices and stuff. I think that some of the crystals I've saw, that's the way we're going, but except they're self-illuminating and they're bioluminescent inside. They're glowing. They're alive and some type of a way, an energy source, not like the crystals here. But when I see what the scientists are doing with quasi crystals, I think that's the way we're going. Quasi crystallography, that type of stuff. So,
well, this has been so much fun, and we thank you for your time, and we really, really enjoyed it. And hey, guys, if you want to listen to it again on the podcast on a fairly long drive into town, like go ahead. It's great. It's so much interesting, so much information, and from ghosts to ships to
cool. I hope I didn't jump around too much, ladies. We're supposed to be talking about the balloons. I hope I didn't.
Well, we got that out of our way pretty fast, and just keep looking up, guys. Just keep looking up is all I can say. You never know what you're going to see up there, dragons or whatever, right? So keep looking up, and thank you guys for being with us. And Barry, Teresa, you have who won?
Oh my God! Yes. Okay. Who shared it out, or was it a comment? Because whoever shares it out the most, or who comments and gets our attention, we pick somebody from the week before, and this week we're sending you a prize. We got Gina Ziskin Fortune. You get to have our meditation, our exclusive spa when we go back in time and space, and we meet with Mott, and we get a cleansing, and it's going to be fun. So. Dina, you're going to love it.
Time to drop those people you don't want hanging around with you anymore. Anyways,
yeah.
Thanks again, Barry. It's been wonderful, and we'll see you in a minute.
Pleasure. Thank you both for having me. I really appreciate it, and thank you to the audience too. Phoenix and everybody saying hello. Thank you very much. You got a nice audience. So I didn't get to look at too many of the comments. I was rambling, so I apologize. But thank you very much.
Thanks very much. You can comment to them and check out Barry's information attached to this podcast or video. Thanks.
Yes, his YouTube videos too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
They're awesome. Thanks.